Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do before I get started with dimensioning, switch to the dimension layer. So that's step one. And then I'm also going to check my dimension style manager just to make sure that my settings are correct. So the things that we went over last week was changing this to 1/8 of an inch. Yeah, you should have saved it in your A-size title block, but if you didn't, or you're opening up an old drawing that you need to change, you got to remember these steps right here. So everything is 1/8 of an inch, and then I'm going to set that to 2 decimal places. Notice my shortcut was D-Enter. That brings up that Dimension Style Manager. Now that you know that Dimension Style Manager is buried over here under the Annotate ribbon, I think it's just so much easier to just type in D-Enter and then get the Dimension Style Manager up on the screen that way. So when I start this one, I'm going to look at this and let's just kind of look at a couple of the dimensions. If we start dimension this one, let me turn snap off. If you start dimensioning this, and I'm going to use there's 2 commands here. There's a continue and baseline. You can use the continue, and you can see that you start like running into a lot of dimensions, or the text starts running into each other, or the extension lines, and that gets pretty kind of crowded, and it's not very easy to read. You would have to go in here and stagger each one of these dimensions, keep taking it up 3/8 of an inch, and move everything around, and still it's such a mess, okay? So that's why I encourage you to use baseline dimensioning on this one, because it's going to step the dimension as the part is stepped. So on a problem that's small, where we're using, where it's 1/2 of an inch, and it's not very, it doesn't have a lot of spacing for the dimension to fit in between the extension line, that's why we choose to use baseline in this instance. So before I move forward, I want to check my baseline. I want to make sure my baseline setting is, so the thing I wanted to check right here is my baseline spacing. This dimension right here is going to allow the dimensions to automatically have a 3/8 of an inch space in between each one of the baseline. So that's what I wanted to double check. So when you use baseline dimensioning, what you do is you dimension the first dimension, and I'm going to type in 0.625 because that's what we're going to use for the first location of the first dimension. The continuous and baseline dimension commands are nested together, so you may see continuous, you're going to have to click on the down arrow to get to the baseline. If you use baseline, watch what will happen. You will then be prompted for the next point, okay? So all you have to do is go down and touch the next point, and it's going to go and put the dimension for each one of those, and you don't have to go click, 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 click. It just looks for the next point, and it uses this line right here as the baseline. Okay, so it's pulling all of the dimensions back over to that line that's given to you on the left. Now you can see our view, our dimensions ran into our part. Not a problem. Just pick the move command. Make sure ortho is on. Bump that up. Since I already know that I'm going to run out of space over here on the right side view, I'm going to bump that guy over. And now let's do baseline on the bottom. So starting with the smallest dimension first. Okay, so I'm going to pick this dimension here. Okay, I'm going to back that up. So I'm going to pick the top and then the bottom. I see how that forced my text to go to the bottom. You see the difference in that? Picking here and here. Picking the bottom and then the top. My text went on the top. Don't want that. I want my text to be on the bottom. So I'm going to reverse the order in which I picked it. So I'm going to type in 0.625 for that first location. And then I'm going to go back to my annotate ribbon. Click baseline. And oh no, look what happens. So it's not looking at my first point. So now my baseline has changed. Yes. We got that from our textbook. The 0.625, it came from our textbook. The ANSI standard is 0.37, 0.37 something another, is the ANSI standard for the minimum dimension. So So we're using 0.625 because it's easy to remember the 5/8. That's what they said. All drawings. 0.625 on all drawings. So you can see here, this is not working out with my baseline because I picked this one and then this one. So it said this is my baseline. I just wanted to show you that potential problem. So I'm going to go back now. Let me just kind of back that up and let's delete all of that. And we're just going to be left with having to fix our text when we're done. So I can easily move that 0.5 to the bottom when I'm finished. So 5/8, baseline, pick, okay? And now I'm just going to take this text and drag it to the bottom. So sometimes it does move around. I'm just going to drop it right here, and then I'm going to move it over 0.375 because I know that spacing. Another way to check your dimension spacing is to use the offset command. You could type in 0.625, offset the given line, and verify that, and that's not in the right exact place, but anyway, we got that there. Just make sure you go back and erase. So what I'm going to do is erase that line and have that set up. So that looks like we have all of those dimensions covered on that front view. So a little shifting, moving around things here and there, but that's our job. That's our job, is to make sure that the dimensions are in such a way that they can be read. Okay, it's nobody else's responsibility other than the draftsman or the CAD operator, the designer, the engineer. It's their responsibility to make sure that these dimensions are in a place that's easy for someone else to read and make that part. So we have one more missing dimension. What else do we need to dimension? The right side? We don't have anything on our left side. So the right side, the depth of this part needs to be located. I'm just going to line it up with the first dimension over here. I like to do that so I don't have to retype in 5/8 of an inch. So if I give this dimension here, should I give it here also? No, that's double dimensioning. So it only needs to be located one place. Okay, so that's what that problem is going to look like. All right, so that one is 375F using your baseline dimensions.